Welcome to another edition of Pink Sock Podcast. Gorak's looking kind of feminine today. I've been meaning to add you to the intro, but it's hard to find a picture of you.
Yeah, I'll have to provide a picture.
Like you don't post very much, but today we're joined by Jimmy Maddon. I don't think he's any relation to the Maddons of NFL football. I don't think he is, but his music is incredible. Like we were talking before we started recording, he's very, you could tell the like Queen David Bowie influence in his
Yes,
music.
you can. Yeah.
Like it is awesome. And he's a handsome man. And speaking of a handsome man, there he is. He's got his hair all nice and spiked up. He's looking. There he is. Hold on. You're a handsome man. You know that? You can, if you want though, to make yourself like look more. There you go, like that.
That's better.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Try and put some down so it's sort of.
Hey, do you happen to have a pair of headphones? Because I think there might be an echo. Let me check. Okay, there's no echo. I love your necklace, bro.
Thank you. A little bit of Sid Vicious. It's about as punk as I get, really.
So, how do you do your hair in the morning? Do you spike it up, or do you just wake up that way?
A lot of back combing and a lot of hairspray, and honestly, it takes me a long time to look like I just got out of bed. I look better in the morning than I do now.
It's a blessing and a curse, really.
I want your hair.
I'll trade you. Oh. So you have been releasing music lately. You released Love Symphony #2. Do you plan on an album? Is there an album in the works?
Yeah. So what had happened is obviously recorded that first record in it was released in 2020. Of course, the pandemic came, and so I shut everything down. So I was in the process of making a second full album, but with the lockdowns that were going on, because I was in Australia at the time, it was too hard. So, but it is something I'm working on at the moment, is getting back. Just let me know too before we start if there's anything you want to do with any lighting.
Oh, you're good. We're already going.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, was planning on making I am planning on making a second record now.
Oh, that is awesome, dude. I can't wait to hear it. I heard your 2020 album, your debut album, and it's fantastic. You can really tell like the Queen Bowie reference, like the influence, I mean, because you sound very like, your music is very like 70s, 80s-ish, and I love that.
I love that as well, the 70s and 80s.
Very nostalgic. Like you sound like you could have been an artist back then.
Probably would have had a bit more success if I had been. No, yeah, it's very much, Queen's like my Bible, in music terms. There's nothing that they do, even their disco record, you know what I mean? To me, it's just amazing. Really, I'm just a shit Queen tribute band in many ways. But, I think all that sort of music is just brilliant. And, like Crime of the Century has a bit of a Pink Floyd sound to it, which wasn't really intended at all. It was meant to be more of an acoustic ballad sort of thing to end the album on. And, we're mucking around in the studio as you do. And ended up playing around with the different sounds. And because I play with a 5p coin, a bit like to take a bit from Brian May. So when you scrape that a certain way, you get this beautiful sort of squeal that you can get off the strings, and it really just fell into this nice sound to get that sort of glassy tone in it. So it probably all just comes from the childhood, really. The records that you grew up listening to.
It's creative though, using your coin to play.
It was really a bit of trying to be Brian May, and a lot of just being determined to do things my own way. I thought if everyone's playing with plectrums, I don't want to do it. So I tried all sorts of things, bits of cardboard that I cut out, trying to use like belt picks used for like ukuleles and stuff like that. I remember mucking about with for a while, and then ended up, really discovering the coin and why it's so brilliant.
Speaking of Brian May, you are going to be featured on his Guitars website.
Yes, I am actually, which has kind of come a bit unusual and come about. But I've got a Brian May replica that I've got, of course, and I'm trying to build my own guitar like Brian May, of course, which is funny because because his was built so unusually, just out of scrap bits, around the house, and I want to do the same. And ended up getting in contact with a chap called Greg Fryer, which is for a bit of a history lesson here for people who aren't familiar. Refurbished Brian May's guitar in the early 90s and made a couple of replicas that Brian still plays today. And he was living in Australia too, or he is living in Australia, and I was at the time. And got in contact with him and said, do you know where I could possibly get some of this mahogany and block board and stuff? He said, I've got it all from the from when I made all the copies for him and refurbished his guitar. So I've been carrying it around with me for 20 years. He said, you can have the lot. If you come up to my gaff, you can have it. So I drove up in between lockdowns that there were at the time to spend the afternoon with Greg talking about Brian and the Red Special. He showed me the original photos and x-rays he took and everything. So I've got all the stuff there, and it's nearly finished, really. The hard work's done. Me and a chap called Ralph de Quattro back in Melbourne. We've been putting it together. So, the determination, I suppose, to be like Brian has come from, and then to come back to the main point of the website, they just sort of seen that I've been posting a lot of these photos with the guitar and tagging him and things and hassling him really, and they said, they're updating the website and said would love to have you on like an artist section there. So hopefully that's the first time to Brian hearing my records.
I bet you felt like a kid on Christmas when you heard that.
Oh, well, and I thought, right, who's behind this? Who's setting me up here?
So was this before or after the bird shit on you when you went for your walk? Because that might be a sign of good luck.
Yeah, it were after. So I don't know what more good luck. Perhaps this interview is the good luck I've got coming. But that were fortunately didn't get my hair. But birds have mistaken my hair as a nest before.
Me too.
But I actually had a spider living in my hair for a while. I don't know how long it was in there till I found him. I felt I was crawling around back there. I thought, what's in my hair? Like a leaf or something. Left it. And then like a day later, I thought, I still feel something moving about. Put my hand right in and pulled out a spider.
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You're lucky you didn't get bit.
Well, I mean, I might have, I do walk around dustily, so perhaps it has done something to me.
Jimmy Maddon is the new Spider-Man.
The thing is the girl who I was seeing at the time was absolutely terrified of spiders, so she was not thrilled when one had come out of my hair.
Man, bro, you're not the only one though that has had like birds shit on you. Because right before we went live on an episode one time, I thought it was a smart idea to get the aesthetic of outside. So I was sitting outside in a chair and a bird just right before we went live. It was a great show. So
it happened to me with one of those big seagulls in Cornwall in the south of England. Massive bird shit.
Like,
it's the strangest thing when it happens because the odds must be quite low that it's going to, happen to you. And I was just out for a nice stroll, trying to take in some sights of Yorkshire and, something to inspire the song. Perhaps that will be my next hit, is about that,
The bird that shat on me.
Yeah.
It's a love ballad.
Put the G, A, and D major and we'll be away.
It's a love ballad. It's going to be on piano. You're gonna
Exactly. My terrible piano skills, as I've been told, because you meant to play the piano like that. I have this habit of coming down like that onto the keys because I'm not a piano player. I'm not classically trained in any instrument. It's all sort of done by feel and trying to work out what the hell I'm doing. And somehow I fumbled my way into a career. But yeah, the piano, speaking on the piano, I've got a very strange habit. I suppose playing the guitar with the coin and playing the piano the way I do, really, it's quite, as I said, I have this weird need to be different.
Have you heard of Jared James Nichols? He's a guitarist that plays with no pick, no nothing. He plays just finger plucking style lead guitar. Like
really?
So straight up metal shred, hard rock shred, like Van Halen style and everything, with just the fingers, like a bass player.
Funny, because I will use the fingers in a way, like obviously you got the pick for like when you're really playing, but if I'm trying to get like a gentle note, I sort of do the same thing where I'll sort of play almost like a bass string, really. Yeah,
like
just to get those lighter tones.
Wouldn't that be a classical way to play? Because I know some people grow their nails out real long and play like that.
I have tried doing that, but it's so much harder. So I find it's because your nails just end up breaking anyway. But I don't know where a lot of these like habits. I think like as a kid when I was learning, as I said, a lot was formed by trying to be Martin Knopfler or Brian May or Eddie Van Halen or any of these sort of Hendrix as well was a big one growing up for me, and Robby Krieger from The Doors, particularly when I was a teenager with the bottle slide. So I had all these influences going on. I think I was just trying to pick a bit of that and a bit of that and take it in and find a way to play. But people have often mistaken me coming from a classical background in the singing style I have and like the arrangement with a lot of the harmonies in music. But really, it's just, as I said, not really knowing what I'm doing. A lot of it, I hear a lot of it in my head before I get into a studio, but I don't tend to really write anything out until I'm in the studio. I can hear where I want the parts to be. I kind of lay them by feel. I think you can, if you're a bit too, a lot of people will shudder at this, but I think if you're a bit too prepared or you can lose a bit of the magic by the time you get in. If you know the part 100% down, you can do it with your eyes shut. I think you've got to try and capture, particularly with records like live, you can capture the energy of the room and bring people in. But on a record, you've got to capture the energy on tape. And so I think you need to have a little bit of, you got to bring that into the studio with you, when you're recording.
See, we kind of do that with this show. We don't really prepare any episodes because the reasoning why is because you got to feed off the guests and stuff. And sometimes like your planned shit ain't going to happen. Like it's just so we keep it casual conversation on this show.
I like it. I like it that way. I used to have a radio show years ago. Well, I co-hosted some, I should say, years ago. We took the same approach. We tried to know what they were about, but kind of let them drive the interview. Made our jobs a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. Plus, like you never know where the conversation's going to go. We've had some very interesting conversations, to say the least, on this show.
Yes.
So you're in safe company.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I feel safe. I feel secure in this space.
You are. We are like the condom of podcasts. You're safe and protected. I like your coat. Did you like kill a kangaroo in Australia for that thing?
You've clearly never seen me camping, so you would know that that's a daft question. No, I really want one for some time, and they're bloody expensive if you've got to buy them properly. And I thought that was as a musician, that's always a flaw in any plan. And I thought, right, I'm going to need to find a different way to do it. And I was just in like a charity shop one day, and they had it in there, and it fit, and it looked nice, and I thought, I'll have that.
See, I love fur coats and all kinds of like fashion, like rock star fashion, but they're so damn expensive, like you said. Like you're looking at spending close to $1,000 just on a fur coat.
Well, that's the thing, and it's like my sort of Jim Morrison look of the leather pants or leather trousers, depending on what part of the pond you're on. They're the same. I mean, they're so expensive. So I think they were secondhand that I got tailored in to be as tight as I could possibly, as he'd allow me, because he said you will need to bend at some point in your life.
See, leather pants are so expensive that towards the end of his career, Jim Morrison just quit wearing pants altogether. It's a little Doors joke.
And your other jacket as well, your leopard print one that you have on some of your photos on your Instagram, that's a good one as well.
That's my little Rod Stewart look. You know, bring a bit of Rod in. It was funny. Again, that was something that I think that was new. I think I actually bought that one new, which is a rarity. Always just trying to find something that. What I tend to like to do as well is try and modify clothes if I get them. Not me, because I can't. You know that scene in The Grinch when he sews his hands together? That's sort of how it goes for me. But I try and get someone to, you know, make an alteration on something so it's a bit more unique and just so it can look a bit more rock and roll, really. I suppose what all of this is about.
So you're a Rod Stewart fan. What is your favorite Rod Stewart album?
Ooh, of his solo stuff, Outside the Faces.
Yes, Outside of the Faces, and it's cheating if you use his covers albums. You have to go with just his original albums, no songbooks. I
love his earlier stuff, to be fair. You know, like the first one or two records he did solo. I thought was some of his better stuff.
I love the early stuff too.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, with someone like Rod Stewart. It's really interesting, and we may be able to revisit this in 20 years' time and see if I look like an idiot or not. But I've noticed with a lot, you know, these older bands, as they get on, it's a lot hard to be releasing this new music. People really don't want to hear it. And I love his approach of he will just go and bang out a couple of records a year. He knows only half of people are going to buy it. He's just doing it for him. But when it comes to playing live, he just plays the hits. And he said that because that's what people are there for. So we'll see, you know, where I'm at 20 years' time, what sort of records I'm releasing.
Yeah, I'll have to have you on the show because by that time, you'll probably look more and more like Rod Stewart.
If I haven't become my hair by that point, because I'm in danger of becoming more hair than man.
Are you aiming to make it bigger? Like
I am. I'm just trying to get it out and get it bigger. There we go. Because the look I'm trying to go for, if Rockstar, you know, if people either will look at me and go, yeah, it's a bit Tommy Lee, Nicky Six about him, or they're going to go, he looks like a divorced middle-aged auntie.
You're going to start looking like Steven Tyler at that point.
I'm going to look like Your Family Christmas Morning.
This is the most Spinal Tap thing I've ever heard. You do kind of look like my auntie, though. She has the same fur coat, and so you're doing a good job.
Brilliant.
I'll see you at Thanksgiving.
I'm a size 6 Fox AC30, by the way.
So where can we find you at? We have you on Instagram, Facebook. You have a website. Do you want to give a little shout out to all your socials?
Yeah, so I've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel that I put up a lot behind the scenes, things like rehearsing for going on the road or being in the studio, as well as like monthly diary entries about what I've been up to. And there is a website where there's a domain name, but I'm trying to get that website rebuilt. So you can Google the website, but I don't know how far you'll get. But
I didn't get very far.
No,
I tried Googling it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think most of the links really. I'm on all the places you should be, except for TikTok.
Google's like, did you mean John Madden? No,
Yeah.
that's not
Well,
what I meant.
it used to be that when you Google me, you'll get that NFL coach, Joe Madden.
Yes,
If you Google
I
me,
kept finding him.
but I'm noticing slowly the algorithms are starting to come up in the Google images. So slowly, post by post, I'm chipping away at Joe Madden, and yeah. I mean, because it must be quite confusing if you do go looking for Joe Madden and you get this. It will be quite. You'll be quite surprised, really. He's changed a lot since his days with the coach.
Like, man, he aged backwards because he's like in his 80s now, ain't he?
Because I know there's a football game about him, like on the PlayStation you can play. Me trying to play PlayStation, clearly I've not played one. And that used to keep me up. But now if you Google me now, it does come up with me and news articles about me, which is nice. Not that I have done it, of course. I've been told about that.
Yeah, I found those, yeah. The
If
news
anybody
articles
wants
about
to find
music.
you on social media, though, I am going to put the links in the description.
Lovely. Yeah, I'm pretty active on it all, really. Particularly like when we're in the lockdowns and all. So, I'm very much active on the profiles and all that. So make sure you do. If you find me, say hello.
Hi. Yeah, I saw you.
The miracles of the camera. Do you remember when like cameras used to be really small? We try and make everything small, and now we decide to make everything big again.
Yes.
Yeah, even phones. They had
getting
the flip,
bigger.
They had the flip phone, and then they turned around and made smartphones like this big. Like they did that with phones too.
And now they got a flip smartphone.
They have.
Yeah, they have another one. It flips and then it flips again into a tablet.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's funny how I suppose, I actually think in general, society is kind of going backwards in a little way, like in a progressive way, but going backwards. Like, I think music's a good example of this, that I think if you look at the last 10 years, music started, in the early 2000s, everything was like electronic, like let's do everything electronically and push that as far as we can. And then we sort of took that as far as we could, really. I think people started to come back to, slowly you start to get real bass in things and real guitars back in things. And now, like the music that's charting now is all very much not music, instruments again. And I think society's going the same way too. We try and make everything smaller, and then I think they realise it was maybe better how it were as it used to be. So hopefully, if we keep going back far enough, sort of 70s glam rock will be back in fashion. I've been trying bloody hard to bring it back, but hopefully by that point we'll be there.
Well, if you look at it, though, a lot of the 80s bands are coming back, and they all have like tours and albums. So the 80s, so we might be going really backwards, and 70s is next.
I was just talking about that with my son today, that it's it seems to be a bit of 80s influence coming back.
Yeah, like if you look at today's music when it comes to bigger name acts, we got Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Joan Jett all touring together. We've got Ozzy Osbourne just released a new record. Like, what year is this?
Well, it's funny too, because like that's helped me a lot in my career, because I've had a lot of younger fan base grow that I don't think would have been there otherwise. And it's strange to think Queen, I spent years talking about Queen and no one wanted to hear about it, all through high school. I said, guys, have you listened to this record? And have you listened to that? And stuff like that. Because Queen were, a lot of these older bands, I think Elton John probably the same, like they were almost dead in the water. Motley Crue hadn't done, they released an album that had another drummer, wasn't Tommy Lee at one point in the early 2000s, I think. And they were all quite dead in the water. And to see them now with films out and, touring around, it's bizarre. It must be stranger for them, to have gone from the absolute highs to nothing, and then you're back in fashion.
Motley Crue even released an album in '94 without Vince Neil on vocals, which we have talked on the show several times about. Controversially, that's my favorite Motley Crue record. But yeah, like these bands have had lineup changes, and it seems like full circle. They got all their old mates back, and they're back on tour again.
I think that's the important thing when like you're an older or any musician really, is that you've got to genuinely enjoy. Like I've seen some older bands who've been brilliant. You know, we spoke about it before, but obviously I've seen Queen, I've seen Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, and I've seen Aerosmith, and they're all brilliant. You know, they all absolutely good. I've seen some bands as well live who clearly just been there because it's paying the bills and that they've not cared, and it has ruined the experience a little bit. I won't shame any bands, you know, like wouldn't dare mention Status Quo being woeful, you know, but it's one of those things. I think if you genuinely love where you're at, then it does make a difference, you know.
Well, the thing I unfairly hear, and I do judge some bands based on performance because it seems they don't care anymore. And I've seen that a lot at live shows. But then you also have to take into play of age. They've been touring this long. They probably wore the hell out. Like when I went and I've seen Ozzy Osbourne quite a few times. And one of the times I saw him, he was having an off night. And people were like, Ozzy sucked tonight. I'm like, dude, he is 70 years old. He's done enough drugs to kill the entire population. You're lucky he's on that stage right now.
Well, and it's funny because I saw Black Sabbath at their farewell tour and thought, underwhelmed by the whole thing. But when I was in Australia, the problem we had as well is it would typically be the last stop on the tour. So they spent 9 months on the road, you know, around the world. Got this massive flight to Australia. And, you know, they're always pretty well knackered by that stage. So I did always have to take that into consideration as well.
And also Ozzy Osbourne, apparently, he did recently come out and say he has Parkinson's, but he's been fighting that for a decade or more. So that's another thing that you got to take into consideration, too, around that time was Tony Iommi had just fought cancer. Ozzy Osbourne was still kind of fighting Parkinson's. So, like, it's crazy that they were even on stage.
Yeah,
touring.
I think I've probably just got to see these bands while they're around, you know, and for the experience of it. You know, I think there's this funny thing, like, see bands before they're massively famous, and you can see them for like a $5 in your local bar, and then see them at the end as well. You know, you could probably skip that middle section where their albums are rubbish and they're just charging a fortune. So there's my tip to take away.
Like there's people that's like, I saw Metallica when Dave Mustaine was in the band. Like those kind of people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, you know, my uncle years ago was telling me that, you know, back in the olden days before technology, that he would look in the local paper to see what bands were playing down the road. And he said one day he looked in the paper and he didn't know the name, and he said the weather was a bit of shit and he just couldn't be bothered going. Lo and behold, it was Mick Jagger. The Stones were on tour, and he used to book local venues under a fake name to road test new material. So a few of the Stones and the backing musicians would go and just play before the days of mobile phones, of course. So you just never know who you're going to see, I suppose you could say. That, you know, he would have been one of about 30 people in a room, you know, with the Stones listening to music they hadn't played live yet. So you just never know, you know, who's playing and under what name.
That kind of reminds me of a guy I used to work with. He was like in his 60s at the time, and he told me, he's like, I used to have a bar in Boston. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, we was running the bar. It was like in the late 60s, maybe early 60s. I'm not sure. But he said that they were to book a band, like a local band that wanted to play there. And he's like, I never heard of them. I don't know if we should book them, but hell with it. We don't have anything going on that night, so we'll book them. And their nickname was the Bad Boys of Boston. That's just what they went under. They didn't have an actual name yet. They came out, did like 3 or 4 songs, left. Next thing he knows, they're playing on the radio a year later, promoting their album. It's Aerosmith.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, well, I'll be damned. We were one of the first gigs that Aerosmith had.
Well, my dad, he saw the Rolling Stones very early on when they were starting out as the Rolling Stones, and he saw them at a small venue in Huddersfield, which is not far from Sheffield. And it was a theatre. It's now a Sainsbury's, but he saw them at this theatre. Not many people there, so yeah.
It's crazy they're still around. Like,
I know.
How?
It's amazing.
I thought it'd be fascinating to be that age. Look, hopefully, I mean, the plan was to be famous and dead by 27, but that's not really working out as well as I planned. But if I am still going at that age, it would be, I don't know if I could get through the set. You know, it must be to play like Satisfaction again. You know, how he doesn't just run through the motions, I'll never know. But it must be, you know, the strangest thing to be still going at their age. But speaking of like bands when they first started, I remember the first ever gig I played. A woman was there by the name of Helen Musara, or Musasa, I think the name is. She's watching this, which she will be very disappointed in me. But she came to see me play, and I was rubbish too, absolutely rubbish. But I just had big ambitions. And she's stayed a fan to this day. She's come and seen me play more. You know, she's always promoting things online. She actually bought the first copy of my album, I believe, you know, when it came out. So you just never know who's going to stick around at these shows. I know there's a story of ZZ Top, one of their early shows. They played to one guy in the room. They turned up, and there was only one man in the bar. And they're going to pack up. And he said, "Oh, look, I'm here." You know, they're completely unknown. And they played the full, you know, set to him, 2-hour show, whatever, and stayed in contact with him as well. You know, he never gave him his details or anything like that, but apparently he used to turn up every time they play that city again, you know, for years. So you just never know who's at these shows.
I saw their documentary and they discussed that. Billy Gibbons is still in touch with that guy to this day.
That's yeah.
And he still goes to every show.
Yeah. It's funny, you know, I was having this conversation recently with someone like I was doing a tour with. I said sometimes the big shows you prep yourself for are the ones where nothing really happens. But the small town gigs or the small little venues is one where you get these, you know, hardcore fans who turn up, or the great stories, or the best atmosphere. You know, I've learned that a lot. Sometimes the gigs go, "Oh, don't know how this is going to go." Actually, are the best ones.
That's why certain big name acts, they will also play smaller venues. That's like in the 80s, Twisted Sister used to play clubs under the name Bent Brother. And it was only the true fans knew who the hell Bent Brother was, because Twisted Sister would come out and do B-sides. They wouldn't do the hits. They just do the B-sides that people rarely get to hear live, and then they'd leave.
I like to think, you know, if I'm at the level where I'm playing like Wembley Stadium, for example, that I would pop back into like venues like that. I think it's important in a way as well. Like, you know, when I was starting out, so many people sort of took me under their wing and helped, you know, me at the beginning with tours and gig etiquette and all, you know, just teaching you what it's like. Because all of a sudden I went from being this kid in high school to thrown into the music world in bars and stuff like that, you know. And a lot of people sort of help me as well. So I think it's important to give back if you get to that point as well, you know, to people. And there's definitely a lot of people who you know, I suppose it's an encouragement more than anything at the very beginning.
So if you do small clubs, you got to use a different name, though. So people, you should be John Maddon. So speaking of tours, do you have any upcoming tours of the UK or US?
Yes, I do. So I'm booking the UK tour at the moment. Me and a musician called Steve Walker are going to be going around together all around the UK, possibly into Europe, but thanks to Brexit, that's not as easy as it once were. And yes, the States is something that we're working on quite heavily, because America's really kind of blown up into this really big market for me out of nowhere. I think they're like my second biggest market, if not the biggest market for me now. Primarily on the East Coast as well, like New York and down and that way, and Texas. of all places. Thanks to a lot of work that's put in by a chap over there called Rocker Bob, who's kind of pushed me in the American side. So yes, big plans to come to America next year, early next year, and really give that a good push.
If you come near me, I'll go see you. I live near like Pittsburgh, PA, or near Columbus, Ohio. That's the two biggest places that I live towards.
Yeah, and that's definitely parts of the areas that we've been looking into as well. Because funny with America, it sort of blew up in this. I tried for ages to like get a foot in the American door, because to non-Americans, music, America's still like the mecca, the hub. If you can make America still like, sort of revered that still in that sense. And I just couldn't get any real interest really. And then a couple of radio stations in the States kind of started picking up some of my music. And I said to him, you can't have my permission to just send this on. If you know someone at another station, just give it to him. I'm happy for it. Somehow, and I've sort of tracked this back, somehow it sort of ended up in a bit of a college circuit. And then overnight, I had all this interest out of Texas, like San Antonio and Austin. And I was thinking, ooh, all right, this is not knowing much about America. Thought this is unlikely, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then jumping in a music group, a Texas music group, they're like, hey guys, I'm a bit of a glam rock musician and sort of had some success in Texas. It's just thrown me a bit. And because the thing I love about the Americans is they like to tell you that they like you.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Australia, it's a bit, it's uncool to say you like a band. But in America, if they like you, they say that they like you, and it's quite refreshing. So I said, where's those? Because I just thought it was a big piss take or something going on. And so I put this post up. And anyway, as it turns out, they said, Austin, parts of Texas in the cities, Austin and Dallas and stuff like that, are very progressive. And I think Austin's motto is keep Austin weird or something like that. And I think it's one other, the city in Texas is like the number one Rocky Horror Picture Show town in America. So it makes total sense. But it was surprising at the time. And it's just come on from there. I think in the last year, America's gone from being a dead market to one of my biggest.
So when you play in Texas, you need to enter to a cover of Time Warp.
Yeah.
But it's weird though, like you'd think it's weird that you're more wanted in the East Coast, in the South, because usually bands are more wanted in the West Coast, like California and states like that. So you said you want to be different and weird. You're doing a good job.
Yeah. Good. I am. Well, it's funny because I thought that my initial thought were, glam rock makeup and all the big teased hair would do well in like Hollywood, but California and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's just too crowded, those markets or what. But bizarrely, much more on the East Coast, in particular out in New York as well, which is nice. I suppose good music heritage, though. The Ramones were out that way, and obviously New York Dolls and stuff like that. So some good like glam rock and rock and roll history out of New York. Mm-hmm. But it's all the way down that East Coast through Florida as well, and Pennsylvania. Texas, Ohio, Nashville as well, that sort of area. So a bit unusual, but it's nice to know it's growing in that way.
Well, like you said though, like California and the West Coast, it's an oversaturated market because everybody goes there to make it. So you got to think there's so many people. Like I was living out in the West Coast for a little while, and I thought about starting my stand-up comedy out there. And then you look and see there's like millions and millions and millions of people trying to make it. And you're just one of those people that might get lucky and get heard. Yeah,
I think, whether that's the case for me, it's just oversaturation or just not put enough effort into that. So I'm not too sure. But, I do get the sense that there's like parts of America where I start to do really well, is that sense that there's not, a huge amount of what I'm doing there. So it is unusual I can latch onto it. And I suppose if I make enough noise in parts of the East Coast and West Coast, eventually we'll take notice.
You have to do with the music what you did with Brian May. You have to annoy them until they know who you are. Because that shit works, bro. I'm not even joking.
Oh, 100%. And I really think a lot of the success of has just been by, hassling people till they play my record. And, or going in and playing as much as I can, because I know when I was touring through Asia, historically and stuff like that, we played some strange places there. And, the flow-on effect, it works. It's an old adage to play anywhere, anytime. In the gigs, you don't really see it, but I suppose as you look back, it works.
So how weird was it for you, though, whenever your second single off your album, The Real Me, charted on the USA Indie Alliance Top 10?
Bloody weird. I didn't really know that it had happened. I said my friend, and he sort of works as this quasi-American agent, really, I suppose, Rocker Bob. He has a radio show as well that he was spinning it on. And he handed it to someone who then ended up playing it someone else, and somehow it kind of got its way around and fell into this top 10. But I didn't know that it was around, so I wasn't looking for it. And it popped in there within like the first week as well, which apparently was unheard of. And he sent me a message saying, "Oh, congratulations." I said, on what? We made the indie top 10. I went, "Oh, God," and he goes, "No," and he sent me the photo of it. I thought, wow, bloody hell, look at that. So it was really quite, it was surreal, but you only get to enjoy it for I'm a big believer in enjoy a moment and then move on, because, with the music industry changing so rapidly, if you try and sit on a glory for too long, you just get upset by the next band. So I sort of tried to enjoy it for a few days, but it is the strangest thing, because the next day someone else releases a record that can bump you straight out of that position. So it was nice, and it was a great conversational piece to have. But as I said, it was very much focused about the next single then beating that one, really, was the aim.
It's weird how like music though can be forgotten so easily, but then remembered so quickly. Because I've got a friend, he's in a band, and his name's Ashley Grant. He was in a punk band when he was like 16 years old, and they released one EP. That's it, and a single, and then they broke up. 40 years later, 35 years later, they get a phone call, and this guy's like, "You guys have the most sought after punk album of all time, that EP." And they're like, "We're going to do a reunion." And they did a reunion, they did a few shows, and then they released, finally, after 40 years, their debut album.
I don't know. None of that came through on my end. I'm sorry.
My buddy Ashley is in a band, and they had a band when he was like 16, maybe. And they released an EP, and it was the most sought after EP, I guess, punk EP. Well, they thought nothing of it. They broke up and shit. 35 years later, he gets a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, your album's the most sought after punk album right now. Do you guys want to do something for the anniversary?" They got back together and released their debut album 40 years after the EP. So it's the longest amount of time between single and album.
I know one of my good music mates did something similar, that they had a band in the 80s. Wrote an album, never got around to recording it, and then in lockdown all somehow combined and reformed to put this album out. Something like, again, like 30 years or something like after they were meant to record it.
My their joke is that they're the laziest band. It just took them that long. But that's crazy how like you have the success and then you like think you're done with it and you leave, and then years later people's like, we remember you, so you're like, well, now I got to do something.
But it's funny too because there's a song on the record called "A Night with" on my record called "A Night with Stilettos," and I wrote that the foundations of that when I was 16. And then sort of evolved over the years a bit. I actually recently, not so long ago, found the original lyrics for it too, which was quite funny. Surprisingly, how much was similar. There's also all sorts of weird references to like cigarette smoke, like hazing amongst walls, trying to be overly poetic. But I remember I kind of got to a point where I was so fed up with playing it because I've been playing it night after night after night, and I dropped it from the set for a while, and had people coming up to me saying, "Where'd that song go? Yeah, we love that song," and stuff like that. And you know, so even those things can stay with people, like the songs. And for a long time, I didn't enjoy it, and I sort of really fell out of love with it. But I had to keep playing it because in my eyes, the songs are mine when I write them, and they're mine when I record them. But as soon as I release them, they become everybody else's. You know, they like, I didn't choose the real me to chart. The people did. So if I'm fed up with playing a song, I need to get over that and find a way to fall back in love with it, whether changing up the way I play it, maybe meddling it in with something to really get my interest. Because yeah, you know, it's. I'm not a big believer in these bands that refuse to play songs because they played. You know, I think that's what happens when you release music or write music.
It seems like. Sorry, bud. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, because it seems like, you know, I'm never the best choice on this thing, so I'm too close to it. Like, The Real Me was never intended to be a single. I just thought it was a good album song. And there's a track on the album called She's Done It All Before. I thought that should be a bit vaudeville and a bit, I thought that's the single. And I was playing the album to a few people and said, oh, what do you think? You know, what would be your three choices? And do I turn you on Crime of the Century with a sort of two clear cuts? But everyone kept coming back to The Real Me. And I kept saying, no, it's not that. It's a good song, but it's not a single. And everyone said, no, it's got to be The Real Me. And so I sort of begrudgingly thought, well, you know, I'm never wrong, but maybe on this occasion I might be. So I released it, and that was the one that charted and become the most, you know, commercially successful song, you know, in a way. So I don't always know what's best.
It seems like with a lot of artists that I've seen interviews with, or even when they've talked about it, it seems like the song that they liked the least became the more popular song. Like with the band Kiss, for instance, I Was Made for Loving You. They hated that song because they didn't want a disco track, and it became one of their biggest hits.
Well, it's like, was it the Beastie Boys with I Want to Rock? That was written as a parody of pop rock music and not becoming, you know, their biggest song. No, Fight for Your Right to Party, it were. You know, that whole thing was a big joke to them. They ended up being their biggest hit. You know, so it's funny because there's also songs that you think would do really well that don't sometimes, or songs that I love that just don't work like live as well, which is a hard one because a lot of the music I write can be quite challenging to pull off live because it's got big guitar harmonies and vocal harmonies going on in things, and you know, different sort of movements within the songs. To play them live is really hard, so I've got to rewrite a lot of them, and a lot of them don't work live. Like Love Symphony #1 sort of works, but it's kind of medleyed in with other stuff because I just can't get away with it acoustically anyway. As it is, you know, it's a really hard one to play live. So, you know, because it's filled with all the backing. And a better guitarist than I, no doubt, may make a YouTube tutorial one day of it, playing all the bits, you know, in one thing. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a hard one to play live. But I need to have it in there because it's the most recent single.
So how do you do the live though? Because it's just you, right?
Yeah, so in the studio it's all me doing everything. And then I will have bands with me, depending on like where I'm touring or how long the tour is or what the sort of shows are. For the most part, and particularly at the moment, as we're kind of just getting our feet post-COVID, is acoustically, and at work, some songs really lend themselves to being like the real me really lends itself acoustically really well. And others not so much, because a lot of the songs I are on piano, I write on the guitar and transpose to the piano. I don't tend to write on the piano and transpose to the guitar very often, so they can sort of be the foundations of the song usually guitar orientated. But it's just trying to remember what I've done when I get to the studio and go a bit crazy, or change things last minute and think, oh, what was that chord? And you end up trying to figure it out again. Which is why a lot of the songs that I play, I have been told by the guitarists, are hard because they're in unfriendly guitar keys. They're like a lot of piano keys, like E flats and stuff like that. Because they're all, it's kind of, I tend to write the song with the recording in mind of how it's going to sound, as opposed to just writing a song and then recording it later.
So when it comes to the titles of the songs, because every musician has a different answer for this, do you come up with the title and then you write the lyrics for what your idea is, or do you write the song first and then think of the title later?
Write the song first, and I hate coming up with titles for songs. I'm rubbish at it. In fact, Outside, the song off the debut album, was just called Outside because in the first line it says, "Is it raining outside?" So I just scribbled outside down on the top of the paper. Somehow it just ended up being just staying the name. So I remember when we recorded it, the producer Carl Frederick said to me, so what's this one called? And I went, Outsiders. But it was what it had been. As a placeholder name. I'm terrible at names for songs. I really am.
You could always do what some bands do and just name it a name that isn't even in the song. Like, for instance, Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba. Like, you can do stuff like that.
I might have to start doing something like that. Or maybe I'll put it out on Twitter or something like that. Like, name this new song,
And the winner gets the title.
Exactly, yeah. And a t-shirt with the title name on the back.
That would be amazing. Do a whole album called Your Album and have all the fans choose the names of each song.
We could even write the songs like by comment threads. Everyone puts one word in.
That is actually a really good idea. That's actually a brilliant idea. Write that down.
I will. I'll put that down now.
Yeah, I find your lyrics really good. There was one with some of the stories in them. Really interesting.
Of my lyrics, thank you. Yeah. I probably see myself as a lyricist first. I don't tend to see myself as a guitarist really. Even though it's a primary instrument, I tend to I probably prouder of the lyrics really than anything else. Because I've got a big love of poetry and studied it for a little bit. And so I think I take more pride out the lyrics and trying to tell a story or whatever it is within a 3-minute window. Like Love Symphony is a really probably good example of, the funniness of some lyrics. I remember an ex-girlfriend of mine a few years ago, it's always said, why don't you ever write songs about me? Like, why haven't you written me a song? I said, well, I tend to write in, I don't write in the moment. It's usually a few months on, I think, can't revisit an area. I said, most of them are breakup songs anyway. I said, they're much easier to write than being happy. I don't know what that says about me. I said to her, it will be something that I'll probably write when we're broken up. I just don't tend to think that way. I'm still writing about the previous girlfriend while with that, that girlfriend. And there's a line in Love Symphony, which was kind of about her in a way, that says, I never did write that love song. And that kind of being within the song that was then written for her as a reference point. There's probably more so in that one than other lyrics, there's a lot more realness in it. Like there's actual conversations we had that in that sort of gospel choir middle section, or whatever you want to call it. The conversational pieces between the female and the male characters were actual conversations that we'd had, you know. So that was probably much more of a real song where, you know, because a lot of time you write a line, you go, it's brilliant, but you know, I've got to take that out. You know, it's a bit, I don't want to be singing that every night. But then you inevitably keep it because it makes the song stronger.
It's weird when an ex is like, hey, you didn't write a song about me. Like, what are you going to put on the album? Hey, you're crazy. No.
It was funny because I remember when she sort of said it too. It was, I think I just had a burst of songwriting, you know, and it was all like, yeah, I wish I could have loved you and we broke up sort of thing. I said, these aren't about you. This is not how I'm breaking up with you via song, you know. I thought, you know, so I have to say to her, these are about other people. And I think they kind of got to think, well, is there not one about me? But, you know, I don't know where, you know, maybe it's this. Musicians have to be inherently unhappy, I think, to be happy, because you need to be unhappy to write good music, you know.
Or out of your mind. Or out of your mind. You have to be crazy or sad.
Exactly, you know. So like you're unhappy when you're happy, you know, you think this isn't right, it's not good for music. So, you know, I remember I used to try and like not like cause arguments, but just sort of shit stir a little bit to get a reaction, to try and better the songs. So yeah, maybe I'm learning a lot more about myself in this than I thought I would. But you know,
this is your therapy session.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Love Symphony was very much, you know, it was a perfect storm of a collection of things. It was written on the piano. I didn't have one, but she actually had this little keyboard that I was mucking around with in lockdowns, ironically enough. And that's where the foundations of the track came from, that were then written about her and had some very real sort of like conversations in it. You know, but at the end of the day, I think like any music, it's, you know, or particularly with mine, you know, as long as people enjoy it, but then I suppose they're just like disposable raisins and throw it out when they're done with it. As I write the songs for me, but they're sort of released for the people. I think as long as they can connect to the story, I think that's what's important, because realistically, these records that come out are a soundtrack to someone's life. There's a summer, you know, it might be like, I remember what I was listening to the first summer I had a license, you know, was driving around like, with the windows down, playing records and what bands were out at the time. So when I hear those songs, it takes me back to that time. So I think, you know, as long as people, if it has to sort of soundtrack something in someone's life, hopefully, perhaps eases, you know, maybe their own breakup, or is the words that they may not been able to find, you know, within or maybe, you know, it's all just coincidental and a bit of luck.
So you have this tour you're planning for next year. Does that mean we're going to have a new album by then? Or do you plan on just playing it by ear? Like, do you have a release date, an idea, anything like that?
So the sort of short-term plan is I've got another song I've written. I'm going to go and release that as a single, hopefully before the year's out, just so I've kind of cap 4 singles off within this year, because we just lost so much time with COVID. And then, yes, go back in and get a full album. But, you know, because I track everything myself, all the vocals, like particularly like Love Symphony, that's all me kind of building on myself. It does take a lot longer than the average recording. And I've got to find a producer who's got the patience as well, you know, to sit with and let me do it. Which I think I've found, you know, so hopefully there'll be a new album, because the material's there, you know, it's just, I remember during lockdown in Melbourne, we had so many of them that we used to record in gaps. So I'd go into the studio for 2-3 days, throw as much down as I could, and then we'd stop for 2 weeks. And then we'll come out of lockdown. I'd do the same thing. And the last time we were recording with the bloke called Peter B in the studio called Studio B in a place called St Kilda, we were recording and I was tracking the vocals to the gospel choir. And he said over the cans, he goes, "You've got half hour." I said, "Well," I said, "I'm here all night." He said, "No, they had just announced on the lockdown starting tonight." And I knew I was about to leave the country and come back to England. And I knew I wouldn't be able to finish it. So I said, "I'm just going to throw as much down as I can. I can't have to leave it with you to piece together." And I knew I wouldn't be around for any of the mixing and the mastering, which was probably nicer in a way because I listened to when I finally got the track sent back to me. It'd been so long since I heard it. It was a fresh set of ears as opposed to being involved the whole way through. So that was a strange way to record, really.
It's gotta be weird to hear your own music for the first time.
It is, and I remember like with Love Symphony, it was because there's so many parts to it. We kind of recorded it as if it were like 3 songs, so they hear the full finished product. What was quite weird, really, because I was so removed away from it that I could actually listen to it.
That's awesome, dude. We would love to have you back on the show, by the way, once you get the tour announced and another album out. We'd love to have you back because this has been fun talking to you.
Oh, it's been great talking to you. Yeah, really interesting.
Is there anything you wanted to promote? Because we were at the hour mark and we try to keep the show between an hour and a half. Yeah. If there's anything else you'd like to promote or talk about, the floor is yours.
The only thing coming up is in November. I traditionally do Movember to raise a bit of money for like men's health and stuff like that. So that will be coming up. So if you are watching, keep an eye out because the only facial hair I can grow is a moustache, and I look a little bit like Freddie Mercury at the beginning, and now I look a bit like I'm going to come and clean your pool. So it's well worth keeping an eye on the updates just for that. But really, no, I'll be on the road around England, or around Britain, and the States very soon. Really, which is nice to kind of pick back up from. Well, it's been a disruptive couple of years with touring. I had a lot of tours that were cancelled during COVID. So it'd be nice to just get back on the road, really. But no, just keep your eye out for me. I'm quite conspicuous, of course, when I'm walking around. So you have to look really, really hard for me. But no, just if you do see me, just come and have a beer with me, really.
Have a chat. I don't really drink beer though. I'm more of like an edibles kind of guy. Can we meet in the middle?
Yeah, I can meet you at the middle. Just we'll have to do it after I go on stage.
I have gin and tonic.
I learned my lesson quite early in my career about drinking too much before I actually start a gig, and now have it down to that nice. There's that nice little limit where you just loose up a little bit before you get on stage. Because I played a wine tasting event once. Unfortunately, not just me, but we all got carried away at the end and had to get on stage. I remember it being a very good gig. However, I'm glad there's no video footage of that anywhere in the book.
That's like
that I'm aware of, actually.
That reminds me of a buddy of mine. He was on this show talking about when he got a little too drunk at a show, and one of his drummers tried picking a fight with the main act. He grabbed the microphone. I forget what act it was, but he got on the microphone and said that they sucked like really loud in the microphone. And almost got in a fight with the guy backstage. I'm like, damn, that's not good.
No, it's there's a very fine. Like I always think of it if. Here's just right, here's, sober, and here's fucked up. You just want to be somewhere in between, just right, and fucked up. There's this a very fine line, but then I suppose you learn that with practice, really.
That's why I don't really drink, because I don't want to, go too far, because this is my brain sober.
I dress this way sober. That's it. Yeah.
I love it though. I really love your aesthetic. Like it's awesome. It looks like you
Yeah,
stepped
it's
right
great.
out of a
You have a
70s
great
album.
style.
Oh, thank you very much. It was nice to be able to grow the hair in lockdown and get past the awkward stage without people being around. So I used to have a very tight Elvis style haircut, and that became trendy, so I had to get rid of it. So I don't know what I'd do if this look becomes mainstream after. Maybe
We
I'll
kind of look like we belong in a band together.
You do, both of you.
It looks like Naomi's interviewing us. Like,
Yeah.
An eclectic twist of a band that would be.
right? I look like I come straight from a Grateful Dead cover band. But go check out Jimmy Maddon on Spotify and all streaming platforms. You're on everything, right?
I am in Bandcamp as well. I'm a bit of an idiot with Bandcamp. I accidentally leaked my own songs early because, like, with like Spotify and stuff, like when you like the distribution company I work with, you choose a date, it goes out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you sort of do the same on Bandcamp, but as soon as you upload it, like it's available, and it emailed everyone who followed me on Bandcamp, being like 3 weeks before the record's meant to come out, being like, you can buy it. And I only noticed because people started buying it. I thought, how the hell have they got this? And realised what I'd done. So I now know with Bandcamp, I've got to upload it on the day. So if you want, early releases and stuff like that, just head to my official channel with it.
Because he's over here leaking all of it.
Yeah, definitely trying to get it out to the people. You are one of the most Spinal Tap people I know. That is a Spinal Tap story if I ain't heard one. Accidentally leaked your own music.
That's brilliant.
I didn't even know till people started buying it. That's the only thing that conned me on.
So, like, did your record label get mad at you or whoever? Like, did you get in trouble?
No. Fortunately, because I mostly sort of work on my own at the moment, it was really only me who that was the worst part. I had no one to get annoyed. I kept looking at the cat and going, "This is your fault." And the cat was like, "Ow," It was sort of embarrassing, but I just kind of went with it. I just emailed everyone saying, "Oh, congratulations on you're such big fans. I've decided to allow you to have this early," and we went, "Oh, brilliant, brilliant." And one of my mates got the email and goes, "Big fan of yours." He goes, "I don't want this." I said, "No one was meant to have it, mate. Sorry."
What kind of friends you got, bro?
I know. Frankly, the fact that they, are seen out in public, I think they were just thinking either it'll go one or two ways. Either he'll be quite famous because he's been, waffling on about it for years, or if nothing else, he's a laugh. Really, I think that's what people think of me when they're with me. They go, "Either he'll have some success, we can ride that wave," or at the very least, he's humorous, not intending to be,
You're going places, bro. You're going places. I don't know where, but you're going there. And I'm here for every step of the way. I'm here for it every step of the way. I don't know where you're going, but you're getting there.
Neither do I. It's like, inside my mind, it's a bit like walking to the Willy Wonka factory. I think it's like if I could give 5 fans a ticket to come into my mind, and they got to fight little me's inside my head, and like the winner gets the unreleased music.
It sounds like everyone will, because you're gonna leak it.
This new single I'm working on, folks. As I said, don't worry about, because back in the day when you used to go on like LimeWire and trying to legally like download this track and it'd be like Linkin Park like underscore like something, and you put a virus on the computer and you say, "Dad, I don't know how that happened." It's like you don't have to do that anymore, because you can literally just go type Jimmy Maddon into Google, sift through the Joe Maddon photos, and there's the music months before it's meant to come out.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, bro. We'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
Check him out
on the show.
Check him out on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. He's on social media. He's a social guy. Look at that smile. Anyway, go check out his music and everything. And guys, it has been a great show. And as always, remember, live long, Rock hard. And look out. He's going to be on tour soon and has a new album coming out in the next year or so. Let's just say year or so.
Year or so, yeah.
All right. Live long, rock.